So let's talk about the money. How much do we actually know about the money? And what is it really worth? Now, I want to talk about central banks. See, central banks are like the banks for banks. Now, here in the US, we have the Federal Reserve. And then we have the International Monetary Fund, which is the IMF. Now, they're supposed to stabilize economies, but in reality, they marginalize small nations and everyday people. Now, when you hear about people coming to this country for better opportunities, you think of like a third world country or poor nations coming for the land of milk and honey. But that idea is just a narrative. Now, in actuality, the central banks and the IMF, they're not working for your or anyone's best interest. Here's how it works. When central banks expand the money supply too fast without more in goods and services to match it, it creates inflation. That means prices rise and the average person pays the cost. That's your grocery bill, your rent, and gas all getting more expensive. And here's the problem. The central banks have too much power and lack transparency or accountability, which leads to unethical business practices. Now, meanwhile, the central bank perpetuates inequality by benefiting financial institutions through policies and regulation. And guess who creates those policies and regulations? That's right, other bankers. Now let's talk about the IMF or the International Monetary Fund. See, they're designed to support global economies, but their policies often favor the richest countries. Now, voting power depends on financial contributions, so large economies like the US and Europe hold the influence. And now, what happens to the smaller nations? Their voices are often ignored. And IMF loans come with conditions that assume every economy works like the developed nations, which isn't realistic. This leads to a one size fits all policy that can worsen social and economic hardship, leaving smaller nations trapped in a cycle of debt and dependency. Now go ahead, get your bag. But both the central bank and the IMF create a system where wealth and power stays at the top, while the smaller nations and marginalized communities face unfair economic pressure. Now, if we want global fairness and accountability and real economic justice, we need to rethink who controls the money and whose interests are being served.